All right.
Okay, welcome everyone. We have no one remote at this point. We have our committee here and a few other members. We have Mike from the select board and a guest who would like to join this committee. We'll step through the agenda items. Just a note that this meeting is being recorded. For anyone who may join or a future reference. And the first order of business will be to take a look at the minutes from last meeting, which James put together for us. We kind of reviewed these. We personally reviewed these, and I see no exception here, other than the fact that one comment about Jeremy coming with a final approved path forward in the April, May timeframe.
Absolutely. So what I'll do is I captured part of that in reference to him saying there was going to be follow-up, but I didn't get the specifics on there of who he was going to come to. So I'll put forward a motion to accept the minutes with the alteration of correcting the dates in which Jeremy, our town administrator, will be reaching back to the capital planning committee.
That'd be fine.
Excellent.
Motion. That's your motion.
That is my motion.
Second.
All right.
All in favor, since it's two of us.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting minutes from the last meeting are approved. Next order of business this evening is Andrew Nicol would like to send out a letter of interest to joining our committee and other committees within town. And he has extensive background in industry, and I thought maybe, Andrew, the best thing to do is just introduce yourself to us and why you'd like to join the committee.
Sure. Well, first thing, we came to Mendon in 2022. Previously lived in Chatham for many years, and you can tell from my accent that not originally from Massachusetts. But we've been here a couple of years. I'm at sort of end of career. I've been consulting, sort of trying to wind that down and get more involved in town things. My wife, Carolyn, she's a very active member of the
Many places.
Council on Aging, Senior Centre, etc.
Library.
So I should pull my weight. So my background started my life as a software developer, but graduated into an adult role in, running telecommunications businesses. So throughout my career, I've been a general manager, P&L responsibility. Although originally a techie, lots of financial training to help me through my career roles. I've worked mostly in Canada, Europe, Australia. I was in Australia for 3 years, and in the US with telecoms companies, but also energy, healthcare, more healthcare technology. So my last role around security, privacy, and so on. But I've always had a business role or a sales marketing role as well. So I've done a lot of business case development, a lot of managing of P&L for a business and all the surrounding roles for that, including capital planning. We run some production businesses and so on. My experience is more like gap stuff. I know there are other rules around towns and how they plan capital and manage affairs and so on. But to me, principally, they're all the same, right? Mm-hmm. So my interest is twofold. I wanted to get involved in economic development because, again, done a lot of business case development. So I think I could help the town with that role. And coupled with that, it's a bit speaking with Phil, I thought it'd be great to get involved in the capital planning committee as well to sort of hopefully help bridge that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm excited to get started on a few projects. And one thing I didn't mention, I'm also a credential project manager as well.
We certainly can use those.
So when we get
Phil's here.
What's that?
That caught Phil's ear.
Well, and this is what got me thinking, actually. You mentioned we could do something to project manage that grant you did.
Yes.
Yeah, which I know didn't work out.
We have another one though.
But seriously, I'm a credential project manager. I took all my
You are trained
on
on
that and using it.
I,
So, I thought, we get some meaty projects, either capital planning or economic development. I can certainly help with formal project plans around that. So,
Awesome.
if any questions,
More just a logistical perspective, the committee was designed to have a total of 5 members. It is appointment-based, appointed by the select board. And it is on normally a 3-year rotation, more just for your information, so you know a little bit more of the background. We have been, actively soliciting for folks. Thank you for connecting and reaching forward, because that's awesome.
Bill, come on.
I love it. It's a good thing. And I work with Carolyn on the rectory stuff. So
Okay.
she's been a huge asset and really helped us through a part of our process as well.
is this Carolyn? Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. So no, I think that's awesome. But I have no questions. I think your credentials speak for themselves. And frankly, in a small town, someone who's willing to volunteer to help says a lot. So thank you.
Yeah, my exposure to you, Andy, as you know, was building the boat that didn't sink. I enjoyed your project management skills and talking about our intersecting careers along the way. And I think your business acumen, as well as your a good desire to help, I think is important to the town. So I'm fully supportive of it. So I guess we should recommend that he be presented to the select board and then send a note off to the board.
Yep, I think, and that's easy. We can pull that together.
Yeah.
We'll also, our other member, Jesse, who's not here right now, he's hopefully going to be joining us remotely. Obviously he'll be able to see this, but we'll also speak with him.
Yeah.
Is Carl also on the committee from a FinCom perspective? I know he's attended the last meeting.
He is not. No, the committee is still just the 3 of us.
Yeah, you might have a 4th willing to volunteer in
You're
May.
right.
Okay.
Good. It would be lovely to have a FinCom person
I'm not talking about FinCom, I'm talking about me.
Yeah.
here. Oh, very good. We'd love that. I like the way you look at things.
Well, and well, you know this, but they set it up so that each one of us had a different end date. So all 3 of the original folks were either set up for 3, 2, or 1 years. I went that first year and they already rolled me onto the next one. And so I think either you're up next or
Okay.
Jesse, but we have the slots, and that would be, that's amazing. So
That'd be good.
great.
Okay, excellent. So we'll put, I don't know if we need to inform out, do we need to vote on? No, I don't think so. We'll just put your name.
Send an email
Yep.
and say there's a candidate that's expressed interest that you're recommending, and
Yeah,
can you let's get on the 4-1 agenda,
And then the select board will reach out, or I'll reach out, somebody to let you know what select board meeting to attend. And then similar process there. That's what we've got.
This is more formal than the one we do, though.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't ask questions. If the committee actually recommends, we tend to, go with what the committee wants to do. They're the ones doing the work. We just appoint.
As James indicated before, I think our heavy lifting will probably come through the summer, getting prepared for the next town meeting, which is in November,
Yeah, special town meeting.
special town meeting.
Yep.
But they're welcome to, we'll get through the process, but I think we look forward to having you on the team, Andy.
Thank you very much.
Okay. As we go through, the reason we moved this meeting up, and Jeremy's not with us tonight, but Mike, you might have some insight from the select board. I may lean on you a little bit. The reason we moved this meeting forward a week is because originally we thought the meeting for the town warrant was closing later. And if there was any last nuggets that we need to try to consider, at least from our viewpoint, at least share those. And Mike, I know you're close to these topics, so maybe I'll ask you to help and sit in for Jeremy's behalf here.
Okay.
While he's on maternity. But that's why the meeting's here. I don't know of any major new activities coming in from departments that would be impacting this May town meeting. Sure.
I'm kind of curious what the committee's perspective is in terms of putting something forth for spring.
I looked through the list and went through the list of what we had, and James provided for me. there's not a lot there that I see that's sitting out there.
Yeah.
And if we did have anything, I'd ask the committee to think about what else is going to impact us.
Yeah.
We have the school coming through, we have some other issues that may be more important.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not speaking on behalf of the board but to that point, I was thinking about this meeting and I didn't talk to Jeremy about it, but I would look to probably limit what we look to propose to spend money unless it's critical.
Yeah, we'll go touch on that list. We can touch on that list now for a moment, but in your packet, I strain, but if I look down the page and a half of projects that were here, many of them have been approved or in process. Several of them on hold, pending the path forward, directions from Abacus.
Mhm.
Literally, if you look at the COA area, we know that there's a van somewhere in the future, but it's not pending anything else. It's still just out there as a placeholder. If you look at all the other things that are there, which is the storage, which is the replacement of the original deck, there is a warrant that was approved last meeting that we have 45,000, I believe, to build that. So we don't need that 63,000, I think, is an error, which needs to be dropped. Because that was the original estimate we had.
When you presented to us though, didn't you suggest the COA budget? Wasn't there a suggestion that some of this work might cost more?
I believe it will.
So do we I was thinking we needed to up it, not, or we're just gonna leave it at 45 and see where it takes us until the fall?
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
There may be a shortfall. I think it's between that range probably to get what's achievable for handicap access primary, not as an entertainment area. If we go down to the next topic item here, the parking is still the path forward. That's a major expenditure. It's critical. It needs to be done as soon as possible, but I wouldn't go forward to the town meeting until we understand what we're going to do with the facility, in my opinion.
I think that absolutely, because if we're still sitting in the recognizing that 3 out of the 4 locations
Is one of them.
is still in debate. So until that Abacus report's truly final and we get those final numbers, that has to be energized well even before we can necessarily push that next section forward.
So I agree. I see nothing moving forward there.
I don't see anything financially, but I do think there's a smart course of action to go to Conservation Commission, or have at least someone from Council on Aging or Senior Center sit in with them to start the dialogue about the wetlands questions, because those came up last time.
I guess I would wait. I'm really deferring to do a lot of parallel efforts until we hear the Abacus report.
Fair. Okay. Yep.
Because we have wetlands determination on other locations.
Gotcha.
And I'd like to see the full picture before we do anything.
Cool. Great.
Spend more energy.
Yep.
Well, I mean, it could be depending on the conservation agent's queue of work to get a wetlands determination, she might just need to go out and sort of walk it.
Yep.
And come back. It's almost like a NOI from the Wetlands Protection Act to say, you go to her and say, we would like guidance. So she always encourages like builders when they start throwing in formal permits saying, let me help you and I can give you the best path forward.
Mhm.
It might not be I don't want to put work on her plate, but I kind of want to put work on her plate, I guess. But she's a great resource, even just to sit down and say, does this make sense to do as a preliminary step? And she might say, I can get that done for you.
I guess one of the concerns I had is that we presented to Abacus the topography of all of it, identifying the wetlands, and I don't know what they've done. I don't know if they've reached out to anyone. I have no idea what they've done. I don't want to, and there's a question about that acre that's sitting beside, that was potentially for parking and may need to be expanded into, that has, on the topographical map, the wetlands are far enough away we could build somewhat there.
I would think Abacus knows about the acre for parking. They have to.
I've talked to them about it several times.
Have they responded or no?
There
Or do they say, we don't know what you're talking about?
was some comments saying that they had to stay within the current footprint.
That is probably a very specific
I was not,
interpretation of the instructions.
Sure.
I was not involved. As you know, I let the town just handle the advocates relationship, so I was not involved with any of the dealings with advocates other than providing information.
Yeah, my understanding is both library and COA will be, we're gonna have a combined meeting with the select board, like in the coming.
That's my
weeks.
understanding, which makes
April.
sense.
Yeah,
April, end of April, I believe.
Yeah.
And which is very logical because that's the time that we all can get that information in one spot.
Right.
And as talk about capital planning of where we sit, that's going to be, other than school budget that's happening and a few other things, that's going to be the biggest nugget that we're looking at for the next, 5 or 10 years.
I would think.
Unless, well, yeah.
There are other
so
considerations.
major capital versus day-to-day.
Yep, exactly.
fleet.
Major,
Yeah.
major cap. I mean, there's always capital, but
Sure.
Call that an investment versus just a capital spend.
Yeah, sure, yeah. The one thing that I was going back through and double checking that's not on here that has been discussed is the milling head for the highway department. That was one that we talked about during our last meeting. From the conversations I recall from Jeremy, that was something that they were going to put forward for use of free cash on because they didn't want to use operating budget for that.
Mhm.
But that seemed to be the only outlier that we
Yeah.
didn't have on some of the older sheets.
I think you might be right.
It's not, because I recognize the sheet, so I didn't know if this has been updated or.
I thought it possibly, I don't know that it's been updated, quite frankly.
Yeah, if you want like administrative support on this thing, I'm happy to do it. If it's,
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
You were near and dear to this, aren't you?
but yeah, I built it, so.
I know.
Yeah. It's your baby.
I don't like,
All right.
but no, but I think the milling head, not speaking for the board, but for me, I think that's, when I look at the equipment in town, that's critical. But I still would put that forth for the ATM right now.
I understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would hold that off. I mean, if Jeremy were to ask, I
Sure.
would recommend it because I don't think we can put it to good use because I don't think the rest of the budget necessarily is set up to support his guys doing that type of work with different supplies and things like that. We have
Sure.
peace, but we don't have all the operational needs.
I mean,
I'd rather plan more around that, but
That's good insight, which we didn't know.
no, I don't know. I'm assuming because I haven't seen anything to demonstrate. Like, we're gonna get a demo of the piece, I think, in the spring.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah, and it also came up, and I suggested this as well. I said, we can't use that piece 24/7. If you're doing a demo for surrounding towns, let's look at a shared services. We can schedule use across different towns for that piece. If they have, I don't know if they have the same rig we have, like we have, it's like a transformer, you put on the top, or sidewalk guy, and you can do it. Not every town may have that.
Don't know.
So to me, the financing, the use, the assessment, that's in progress. So I wouldn't plan on spring.
Gotcha.
As I went through these other things, a lot of these I think have already been handled.
Agreed. Yeah, there was nothing in here that came up to me as like, this is either,
Yeah.
the only new ask that I didn't see represented was the milling head.
I think the biggest challenge, speaking to somebody who may be more involved in the summer, is getting the town departments more engaged on
Yes.
the data collection piece.
Yep.
The data collection, and also I think when you have something of a threshold, again, it should be, but if it reaches a certain threshold, we should have presentation by department heads and get that integration into the.
Yeah, have you guys had a chance, do you have any engagement with Jeremy right now?
Well,
Because we talked about from a process standpoint, they would have an opportunity to sit. down
we
with
had, we
departments.
did have a few sessions with
Correct.
Dan.
Correct.
We had the fire chief in.
Yep.
So we had those 2 sessions, and then we had the library session, which I thought was good from the trustees.
Yeah, so I was on that.
Yeah, so I think that's where people came in with their proposals,
Good.
plans and thoughts. So that's working piecemeal. We need highway.
Incremental, right? It was new, it was probably new for them too,
Yeah.
right?
It was.
Yeah.
And before we talked about doing that, when we had the working group, and it didn't occur, so we're stepping in the right direction.
Yep. And even just a couple departments in, that's better than none. So, I think the only reason highway wasn't there is because he had some other family issue or some other event. So we would be at 3 and not just 2. But again, that's, once we get past this warrant and this town meeting, you know, we were talking about scheduling for what the summer looks like. It may be smarter to say, hey, let's make sure we do 1 or 2 meetings and we design the meetings around department heads. So sitting down with department heads and our committee and having an open dialogue about where's this going, what we're trying to do.
And potentially we could link that into, you know, Jeremy's review of the department head.
Yeah, I think he's obviously the lever.
Yeah.
With the intermediary to kind of bridge that
Mhm.
and form that
That's
process.
that report.
Yeah.
And I'm not aware of anything new. I was hoping if Jeremy had something, or Mike, if you have anything with select board, I didn't see anything that hasn't been milling around.
My concern would be that there's things milling around in various heads that will pop up at the last minute. But
Sure.
From a select board standpoint, I'd say too late.
Yeah.
Honestly, unless it was an emergency, because I think getting folks to think in terms of the new cycle you guys have, the calendar cycle you have put forward, shifting it away from ATM, they should be ready to go. Like July 1, they should have, and as we kind of talked about that, they should know what their needs are. And they gotta start thinking 3, 5, 10 years out now, not
At the end of the day.
next spring.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
July 1, they should understand what the budget to the ATM is going to be. It's already been done, documented. And they should know what's going to miss even well before that, so they know what they need to ask for. For sure.
Yeah, and I think the good news is not seeing new things, partly because I think we've been able to bring some capital spend into the budget. So it's in the levy planned for, so it doesn't really
Yeah.
rise. Although it probably should, you should still have your eyes on it, even if it's funded through the levy. And the levy should just be one funding source.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't matter. So, you know, I didn't think that there would be much here after reviewing this, if any. And I was looking for, you know, some advice, and Mike, yeah, I think since you sit on the select board, and with Jeremy not being here. I don't know, they're the incidental things like we raised in our meeting,
Mhm.
but I think they're nickel and dime items. They're not, they wouldn't raise to the capital planning level anyway.
You know what, the backhoe, for some reason that might be on the line. I see it's under TA review from a status
I believe
standpoint.
it's already on the warrant.
I don't know, but I would suggest let's kind of hold on that.
I would hold too. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that going forward.
That jumped up to a 2026 need, but that used to be a few years out originally, but when we first looked at it. So.
Yeah, I think for this town meeting, there's not enough time to really dive deep into it, to your point. Even though it's been under TA review, maybe.
Yeah.
And
What's road repair supplemental funding? Did we do that in the fall?
we did that in the fall and said move forward to 250,000, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think at the select board meeting, you guys, Jeremy wanted to go a little lower, but I think you guys supported the 250 or 150 at least. Because we had an incremental state investment.
Mhm.
So I think we might have lowered it a bit, but we want to continue to do that because that's the first of the 3 years.
Yeah, we do, but I think I would also want to understand what his balance is, because if he's not running through his balance in a given fiscal year, why leave the money sitting there?
Agreed.
That's a question I have to Jeremy. I just wasn't sure. I'm just looking at 26 items on this.
Yep. Now, that was one of the few things we had a split vote about, but I think we came to a smart resolution. That's why it went forward the way it did.
I think the state's also doing enhanced, following the same form. We might be getting more Chapter 90 this year than some of the last year.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
On the COVID, I'm assuming is outside of scope at this point. I mean, we're in the process of trying to solve that problem, correct?
We're moving ahead with, I mean, we're I guess the discussion last night at a select board meeting was just about traffic patterning, how we're gonna deal with it, but I think, the town's in for like 300,000 and the rest is grants, state funding.
And the 300,000 in our last meeting, we kept stressing to Jeremy if there was any.
I think we've already banked that we've allocated that.
Correct.
That was our last message. Go find it rather than spending the pot of money.
Right.
And going to the people and asking for more money, just see if we can bank it somewhere, put it in a capital fund or put it somewhere.
Well, that was the discussion also about the special capital fund that had been designed 10 years ago or something, where you were authorized to put in the 100K a year, but that was the cap.
Yeah.
So that had been used previously, but then was up to the next level, which was where those funds were going to come from. So it was already existing.
Yeah, there's like
Savings.
350 sitting in
Yep.
CapEx right now.
Yep. So, yeah, I don't think there's anything else from our perspective on that one. Honestly, until they really start breaking ground and something changes. So,
Yeah, and I think the other pieces that I think Jeremy talked about, which will ease the pressure here, or the departmental pressure, is trying to set up some accounts that are more town-wide rather than having the computers eventually move into a computer-based
Yeah,
budget, having the facilities move somewhat into little ones, but have him have more control of the facility.
well, I mean, I think we have one macro facilities line item we've never had before, right? About 75 in it. And that's to allow Dan to do
What is it?
smaller, yeah.
Well, the buildings are, I mean, you need to repair them.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't think there's anything that we see for the town meeting.
agreed.
Select board through your meetings may find emergencies and make whatever your decisions are, just keep us informed.
Yeah, no, I think, fortunately, I think Jeremy's budget is pretty well baked. It's been in a good place for a while, and now we're just gonna solve for the school appropriation, the assessment we just got.
I think the school's the big piece. And I think the path forward with the library and the senior center, looking at the needs. I've poked around at the senior center and the council on aging to our point that we talked about before. We talked at the select board meeting, getting all these programs that we run in various sundry organizations like parks, library, and senior center. And having some cross collaboration with the administrative staff or working staff so that we can get synergy around a program. Because if we want to do Marjan in the senior center, the parks department and the library, once we figure a smart strategy to be able to do all the, or you want to do something else.
I think operationally, you'll find that's a direction that would be suggested by the select board. I mean, sitting through different presentations and you see space for programming in a general term, maybe different program, but there's clearly a need across at least 3 large departments, right? So how do we get, build once, use many type of thing, and
it's really, maybe a SharePoint drive that says here's your scheduling and.
yeah, I'm not solving, I'm talking.
Not again. But anyway. Andrew, these are some original matrices we use for weighting factors. We've debated on changing these during the packet. I'm just going through the extra stuff that he has in his packet. And that's just the matrix we used. It was a way to put some priority setting, and it worked at the time. We may change it as we move
So
forward.
each one of those appears as a line item.
So that was a basis we started 2 years ago, I guess, or 2.5 years.
Yeah. And it works, like it's simple, but it helps us at least get a first smart blush look at where things sit as we start evaluating town's needs and then safety. So it's going to change and refine. And honestly, with the more expertise that comes into the team, we'll be able to refine it even more. So.
And I think the final thing in the packet that we spent a few minutes on, I don't know if we want to solve it. I don't think we have Jesse on board. He's traveling. But I think it's something we want to do maybe in a meeting prior to our first departmental meeting. As I looked at all the stuff that Jesse shared with us, as far as how his organization is different than what we do, but the way they take transactional items and they roll them up. The one spreadsheet I really liked in here was after you categorize this, you get a view of a 10-year slice by major components like facilities, major capital investments. I could envision us doing something like that to get a roll up to say, here's what the town forecast looks like.
Yeah, I think
Potentially.
as he'd share, I asked him for copies, and I think it's important that this committee sit down with Jeremy to define expectations. Because when I think about what Jesse does as a job, I would not expect a volunteer committee to get into the detail he describes. But that doesn't we had a roll up by inventory, facilities, et cetera, by tab.
Yeah.
So I think, I would ask if I think the committee should get some expectations from Jeremy as to what he expects the prime. So to me, it's more about this committee is to gather information and provide recommendations. I don't expect a department head or this committee to define source of financing or things like that. You know what I mean? That to me would be the finance team.
Yep.
But I would defer to Jeremy saying, what's his expectation? So how does this committee integrate with the operations in a way that Jeremy gets benefit? I mean, a lot of information you guys have and discussions, like you meeting with department heads, you know, he meets with department heads
Monthly.
You have a deep dive topic. He might have a cursory discussion. It's monthly, right?
Yeah.
So I would say maybe engage Jeremy and say, what do you need us to do? This is what we were thinking. Because some of the financial stuff, I would say, don't let him run with it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think his expectations when he talked about it, he's just trying to get, as we were back when, just to get a short window for the next couple of 3 years and maybe 5 years out. And Jesse's business is much different than our business, and I can understand where he's coming from. And his is very predictable.
But the thing is, and I would say this to everybody here, you all bring a skill set. And it's in discussing the select board to somebody, I just said, it's not rocket science.
No.
You have a skill set, you're presented with a problem or decision, and you'll find that what you use in the private sector can absolutely be applied here. And there's some nuances to municipality stuff that I rely on Jeremy to tell me, no, Mike, you're wrong.
You can't do that one.
Right. I know why you think you could do it, but.
Because of municipalities, not my background, everything I do.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And every little, I mean, the first spreadsheet, the working group did, Phil, Jeremy he's just started. He goes, oh, that was really helpful to get ready for a meeting. It's like, good.
Good.
And what you've done since then and incremental improvements, it's only going to make it easier for him. And I think he should really give you that feedback as what he needs.
Yeah.
And I think we've given him an idea, and he's given us some insight the last time. We need visibility to the strategies and plans and direction, because the first couple of meetings, we're kind of like, you know, in the cave mushrooms. I said, we can't operate this way because I can't logically think of priorities without having a bigger global picture. And he's providing that now.
Agreed. And, you know, thinking about, especially ignoring the finance side.
Yeah.
Getting the department heads and working with them to look at it. I love this simple breakdown of critical and non-critical, because that immediately gives you, in many cases, timelines you can work with.
Mhm.
So we, from the get-go, when we, you know, made this thing official, we're doing our best to be, you know, money source agnostic, which has been helpful. I think that, like, sitting down with department heads and having that bigger discussion of like, okay, what do you really need? What don't you need? And where do you see yourself?
Yeah.
But again,
I think that's hugely beneficial, because I think half the challenge is to change the mindset of the people who are the beneficiaries of this, the department heads. So they're thinking more long-term. So if you talk about strategy, we could say we have a broad strategy. But the department heads, just by talking to you, you'll be able to derive where they want to be. They may not be able to articulate a strategy, but in talking to them, you can just see where they want to be.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, well, they're living the day.
Yeah.
And they know what they need to get to usually.
I'm going to give you an example. So we got the new boat. So, you know, Chief Bang got the boat for the fire department. When they got the boat, the first thing they did, they called me and said, hey, can we sit down and talk about what it means to use the boat in our operations? And him and you know, the other crew, they took a step back and recognized this was new. This was not something they did normally, but they weren't reinventing a wheel. So they went to a resource that they knew they had to be able to pull in. How do we do the training? How do we make sure we're mapping out all of our locations and access and egress and use? So they had that logic of like, okay, before we can even say go on this, we're going to have a lead time of 1, 2, 3, 6, 10 months or whatever it is to make sure our teams are fully up and operational. And it helped them change that mindset of like, I got tool, I go fix.
Okay.
Now it's, I have a pipeline to make sure I'm prepped so we can execute wherever that is down the road.
And the
Given
next,
that just that example tells me, should we have prioritized that vote when we did, or should that have been a start your prep and understand when the vote comes in 6 to 12 months?
So I think actually timing worked well
Yeah.
because of when the acquisition happened across winter. We had no capability to be underway on the water anyway.
Yeah.
So that was time to start the training plans
Mhm.
and to understand what it's going to be to start the learning process. So I think we got lucky.
I was gonna
That
say,
timing was
I
right.
would suggest it's luck.
Yeah, I'm just saying from a priority standpoint,
Oh,
you're saying procurement timeline compared to readiness timeline. What does that mean in terms of
Sure.
recommendation?
Yep.
You know?
No, it was lucky in that case.
Yeah.
But that type of logic can help us in that next set of conversations.
Yeah. Because you can ask the questions of, so when you get it,
What do you got to do?
right?
Are we going to be operational? Is this just a plug and play? Is this not?
Yeah.
What's your pipeline? How do we help you get
Yeah.
to the operation? How do we get you there?
I think and the other thing, I think if we could I think it'd be crucial for for this committee to work, to have the department managers interact with us. If that doesn't happen, I think there's limitations. It's just, counting the beans.
Spreadsheets.
Spreadsheet. The other thing I would hope that we can do, and I know Jeremy's trying, and I think the select board, is to have the departments understand the global picture of priorities across everything.
Mhm.
Because right now, the education system is an important priority. We need to solve those problems. And we need to put everything else aside, not everything aside, but we need to say, okay, how can I help that from my department angle, rather than just help myself? I think that's a maturing of the
Mhm.
town's departments.
Oh, I think leaps and bounds,
Yeah.
how the operation is changing. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're not plugging holes.
right.
Okay.
That's big.
Now, Mike, I'm going to count on you for your guidance here. I'd like to start.
I'm sorry.
No pressure.
No pressure. Looking at the calendar, which you originally worked on for this working group, and looking at what we need to do this summer with departments, what would you recommend from a calendar startup for this team?
I mean, I think you need a little more runway for STM.
Yes.
So I'm thinking we need to back it up to May 20th, right? Just after the election.
Good.
Which would mean I would think right now you would start planning. I mean, what's going to work with Jeremy, because he's got your calendar, your timeline, and you got the budget timeline.
Yes.
In my mind, they should be like this.
They should be,
right.
They should be making.
And I think what Jeremy's probably doing is thinking that, well, they can separate once they get ground a foundation of what their needs are. So they're still getting used to understanding what does it mean what do you mean what my capital needs are?
Yeah.
I think public safety's got a good grasp. I think highway does. I think COA is getting there.
They're getting there.
I would say the library is probably more thinking focused on rectory and some smaller scale items, when you see the requests. But I would say you can't start before ATM,
No.
which means I think when we did the original calendar, we said, July 1, we said by September, we would have all the requests so that this committee working group could start assessing and meet with people. Not thinking STM was the target, but ATM was. So you just compress that timeline. But I would say we should talk to Jeremy about getting his take on department head interviews and requests. Like, can you get requests, capital requests for, and it shouldn't be for FY27. I think it's, can you refresh capital requests
It's a refresh.
every year, which includes updating mileage on all the fleet,
Yep.
stuff like that. Just we should outline for Jeremy, this is what the committee needs to start the process. We probably need it by a June 1, right? Which would probably only be 30 days longer, but I also think that you're much further, like, everything, by watching you, everything on the spreadsheet, you're like, there's nothing new here. So you should be talking about incremental changes that you need to evaluate, right?
Yeah. I
Or
mean,
you could have your department head meetings in the, mid to late July through August, right?
Sure.
And then your warrant for STM is going to open, in September and close in probably September. You know what I mean?
So based on your thinking, Mike, and I think your guidance, that's really good. June would be the time to really nail down our requirements.
Yeah, the requests, yeah, what their needs are, any changes, like it's sort of department heads, you need to update your capital.
Yep.
Stuff, and we should be able to say, this is what we have. Jason, Chief Bangma, can you, this is the fleet, this is the inventory, this is our mileage, can you update this, give them a spreadsheet?
Yeah.
And update the spreadsheet, we can worry, they don't need to do the forms we built. I will volunteer to do that, I can update the stuff. But yeah, I think that's and get Jeremy to say, yeah, June, we need to do a capital refresh. That becomes a annual thing, you know?
And if they do a capital refresh, then they get, like you were saying, to present in the July and August timeframe.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't say present, I'd say discuss.
Discuss.
I'd make it as, I don't want to put more work on them. You know, they come in and really just sort of tell us why it's important, you know? But I'd also defer to Jeremy on this. So this, you asked me my thoughts. He may have thoughts where I'm going to do it in department head meetings. I already thought that through, guys. You never know.
In our discussions with Jeremy, I think he's in line with what we're talking about here, because we talked about having department heads come to.
Okay, I just don't want to step on, you know, if he's got a plan, he's got to check. I'll defer.
Jeremy's on maternity now, but he'll be back in
30th.
30th.
Okay.
So June, July.
We're trying to get him not to pop into meetings like he did last.
Okay.
And then he was on the meeting with me, don't talk. He kept talking. Go on mute.
It's hard, but
Yeah.
you know, you got so much invested, you want
Well, I'm sure he's like, I gotta stay engaged because
Oh,
if I get back, it's gonna be like a sprint to the finish line.
Hey, Mike, he's like in the times when I had kids. How you doing, hon? Good. I'm on a conference call. I'll be with you in a minute. Well, I got to fly to New York. So that gives a conversation with Jeremy. He'll be pretty busy when he first walks in the door, early April.
Jesse just.
And we just got Jesse. Hey, Jesse, how are you?
Jesse, how you doing? Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Hey guys, sorry I'm late. I came in late today.
That's all right.
No worries.
No problem. Today was just kind of a review, an introduction of a potential new member here, Andrew.
Oh,
Okay,
nice to meet you.
He's stepping up to want to volunteer with us. And we were covering the fact, a quick summary for you because of your important input is we didn't see anything glaring from the old documentation was provided that we need to push for this town meeting. Out of any of the capital requests for 26. And so going through that list, which we did, we didn't see anything that's urgent or critical. And now we're just kind of discussing what we do next and planning a quick meeting with Jeremy and a phone call actually with Jeremy in April. We have him sit down and figure out how he wants to proceed from his viewpoint. But we're looking at meetings in June. And July and August to wrap up with departmental discussions.
Yeah. And then the only other thing is Jeremy is working to have the Council on Aging Senior Center, along with the Rectory Subcommittee, meet with the Select Board to talk about what that larger package, capital building looks like, or that process looks like. We still haven't gotten the official final advocates. So we're still waiting on that. But that meeting, I think, was going to be happening the end of April, or at least tentatively. So
I requested that Jeremy brief the two trustees and the COAs before he goes to select board.
sure. I honestly, it's kind of like the discussion perspective. If all of us are at the same table,
Collectively, yeah.
whereas there's not going to be any decisions made at that time because it's still going to be new information. So I think both could work, but I don't see any harm.
I don't think we need to be I think before we go to select board, collectively, the receiving departments, library and council on aging needs to see the data
Oh, that's good.
before we just present it to select.
Sure. I don't disagree. Also wanted to thank you on the stuff that you sent over. It's energized our conversation really well about critical and non-critical and how to kind of capture that well, you know, and Mike brought up a really good point about making sure we're also having a really close discussion about the needs of Jeremy. So from a town administrator perspective, what's going to help him energize the different avenues and paths and help then support the select board in their decision-making process. So
Is that Mike Goddard that I see way in the background?
Yeah,
Hey,
that's-
Mike, Mike, you got that? Yeah. Mike got the same spreadsheet you guys got.
So it was really helpful to kind of open that dialogue up. And once we do get Jeremy back, and he's not too chaotic with the warrant and the rest, we'll hopefully have a sit down with him and chat.
If we can find a way to zoom out and see the next 1 to 5 years at a minimum as a whole, instead of talking about things piecemeal, I think it'll really help be more efficient in planning. So, I mean, it's the only thing I could think of to start the conversation at least.
I think there's a suggestion, you know, Jeremy's taking a run of framework for a 5-year budget. So I think another next step in that effort is overlaying capital in that same window. And also getting, you know, engaging, collaborating with the school system on something similar.
Yeah.
As we see their view.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think in the spreadsheet that your third or fourth tab in, I thought the summarization of the various was quite interesting, quite good. Because that really laid out on the project here, running over 5 years.
Yeah.
And you could take a snapshot of what's going on. I think we can achieve that. And I think Mike brought up a good point that Jeremy needs to understand what type of roll-ups he needs and wants to manage. And I think he's, to your point, if he's going to a 5-year budget plan window, this would fit nicely in there.
Yeah, so I mean, we sort of have a kind of a marked off certain investments in public safety for this budget, police next year, fire 2 years out. Same idea. You start to marry in the physical capital and the facilities, you start to see a more broader picture than what Jesse's even suggesting, is you see both people and facilities.
And
Yeah. Awesome.
okay. So I think with that, I can reach out to Jeremy and see when he's available, maybe just get a quick a discussion with him to kick off. But it looks like the June timeframe and will be a more formal process rather than just talking to Jeremy. And then July and August with department heads and discussions, preparing us to make sure we're ready for the September meeting board.
I think if you reach out, I would send to Jen O'Neill, maybe CC Jeremy, because she will acknowledge.
Yep.
He's checking emails, but he's, you know, I think
Okay,
when the baby's down.
She's acting.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
When
And
did the
then,
baby arrive? I didn't even know.
Was it Thursday?
Yeah,
Oh,
it was
well,
research.
great.
Yeah.
Great.
Everybody's healthy out here?
Everybody's well?
Yep.
Yep,
Great.
that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And Andrew here, we've talked to him, we've all agreed that he should go forward. You can meet him on our next meeting in detail, so we don't drag this along. But he's stepping up. He's got some good practical business experience that'll complement the team.
That's great.
Andrew, I heard economic development is an interest of yours, right?
Yeah,
We have an economic development committee.
when I started looking at the website, I started with economic development.
He sent a email request to join that committee.
Tom?
Everyone's, went to wherever the webpage sent them, and it went nowhere. And on our website, it goes nowhere. There's no place to go to join this committee. So,
And it was the new website, so I did wonder if, something that, a new
I
website.
will,
Sometimes they miss.
Tom Raleigh is he's the chair.
Oh,
I'm the select board liaison, so I can,
can you pass them along? Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure who it went to because
I might
That's a
test that tonight.
there you go.
Tom, did you get this?
Well, he tried to find how to get to us and it doesn't go anywhere.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, just to close the loop, is Andrew wanting to join, or is he still thinking about it? And are we taking a vote? That's, I guess.
We decided we're gonna recommend them forward in your absence because we had a quorum, but
I should take a vote.
yeah, we're gonna recommend them to the select board. And the
Got
select
it.
board votes them.
Yep, great.
And if you want to chat, if you have any,
We can do it. We can do a vote since we have all three members. There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah, we can do that.
I'll present a motion that we present a recommendation to the select board for Andrew Nicole to join the capital planning committee.
I would second that.
Any discussion? Awesome. It will be a roll call.
Roll call vote. Bill Sipley, aye. Yes.
Jesse,
James Thatch, aye.
Jesse Curl, aye.
Awesome. Got it recorded. Now you're official. Watch out.
Oh, dear.
Mike's gonna go track that bug down, Mike. Let's not get any volunteers for committees.
Does Mike have his gavel? We can make it official right now.
He's on an unofficial.
I'll throw you a mouse. Whack.
Okay, I think with that, we'll be a little bit fluid on our next meeting until we get a hold of Jeremy.
Yep. Okay.
But we got plenty of time to react to it. Don't let me slip past the April timeframe, early April, mid-April.
Will do.
Okay, poke me.
Yep.
And we'll get our next meeting set up. And we'll send off a note to the select board so that they'll schedule you in. We'll send it off
Yeah, I
to
would send it
Jen
to Jen and Jason Cooter.
Okay.
and Jason, and then they'll schedule on a meeting. And then whenever that is, if any of the members here, I'll be there.
Sure.
We'll go with you and then.
Yep.
We're gonna have 3 meetings in April, most likely. So if you're not planning on meeting until sometime after that, just let them know so that, because they're gonna try to manage the agenda to make sure that ATM's smooth. So if it could wait, let them know if you wanna, but it'll be a quick hit.
I mean, it's 5-minute hit.
Yeah.
You know me, I like,
Yeah, and honestly, Andrew, you can join the meeting or not, or online. We leave it up to the person. But if you were unable to make the meeting, I will recommend that the board forward.
I think, Andrew, if you can make it, it's a great bunch of people to look at, just to watch them. Okay, very good. With that, I think that's it for the meeting.
Cool.
I'd like a motion to,
Well, before, just to make sure we don't miss anything, Jesse, do you have anything else, any other topics not identified on the agenda or things you wanted to bring up?
No, sir, we covered everything already
Super.
in a very
Awesome.
short time.
Hey, we'll take it. We'll take it when we get it. I'll present a motion to adjourn.
a second.
Awesome.
Bill Sipley. Yeah, adjourn, yes, aye.
James Thatch, aye.
Jesse Curl, aye.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Remember my name.
Good job. You got it. I will stop recording. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Jesse.
Nice to meet you, Andrew.
Do you want me to take a run and clean up the spread?